We conclude now with our friend P.J. Corkery, who is one of our early guests when we started the program, columnist for the Examiner, San Francisco Examiner, but you're not a columnist right this moment.
That's right. I'm on leave to carry out a piece of literature.
Literature.
Yeah.
You have a very interesting character at the source of your narrative.
This is a book. It's Willie Brown's book.
Is it Willie Brown's book, or is it a book on Willie Brown?
It's Willie Brown's book. This is a book that will carry the title By Willie Brown. But it's a book that I had suggested to him some years ago. And I used to, like everyone else, you'd hear these unbelievable pronouncements pop out of his mouth. Sometimes you'd think, well, they are jokes. Sometimes he was just being shocking and things. But they were great pronouncements about politics and everything else. And also, over the years, at these Friday lunches at Le Central that he holds forth at, has for 40 years, I would go sometimes and he would be talking about politics, or talking about life in general, talking about his upbringing. And I began to deduce that there were certain rules of politics that he had developed over the years. And at the same time, I'd often wondered what really goes on in a politician's head. How does a politician, a very successful politician, look at the world? Look at the world of politics, look at the citizenry, look at the electorate, look at how things get done. How does he look at money? And I thought to myself, this is a book that you can't find on a library shelf. A politician tells you about politics. And there's an old line of George Orwell's, which is, write the book you can't find on the library shelf. So I had suggested to him that, and particularly, this was particularly after he gave his farewell State of the City address in the Rotunda, which was a remarkable piece of oration in which he talked about politics and the importance of never closing the other side out completely. He really ran down some amazing rules of political behavior, and it was particularly after that that I thought, this is a book that he could do, as well as including parts of his own life. So I worked up a proposal with him and began talking with him about it, and now we're writing it. The book will be finished, I think, this summer and then published next year. But it's his life, it's his story, and it's delving into the mind of Willie Brown. I mean, there are a couple of models for it. There's a great old book from around the turn of the 19th, 20th century called Plunkett of Tammany Hall, which is about George Washington Plunkett, a boss of Tammany Hall. And a reporter from the New York World went and interviewed him at the shoeshine stand he went to every day and just asked him, how does this work? How does that work? And from that, all sorts of rules about politics.
And that was a book that we had to read in high school here in San Francisco in our civics and politics class, that book.
Well,
do you want your book to be that way too?
Yes, to some extent. I mean, that's what I would, I mean, Plunkett of Tammany Hall, 105 years later, is still a very valuable book about city politics. But obviously things have changed a great deal. Willie Brown is not George Washington Plunkett. He's not the boss of a machine, though some would differ. But I wanted something that would be as current and as relevant to politics today as that book was, and to really get some rules.
But so is this a biography, or is it more of a handbook on politics?
Well, it's you've got the crux of the thing right there. It is both. It is a handbook of politics, but the lessons are illustrated by his life. And one of the
can you give us an example?
Oh yeah, there are lots.
Could you give us one example without breaking your ironclad contract with the?
Well, let me just give you an example of ingenuity here. When he was Speaker of the Assembly in the mid-'80s, cell phones were first coming into use, and members of the Assembly decided they all wanted cell phones. So he had his staff look in to cell phones, what they cost, what the rules were governing their use, and staff came back and said, well, here's the situation with cell phones. They cost this much, they're still rather expensive. And also, cell phones, unlike landlines, carry a lot of records with them. If you make a phone call from here to across San Francisco, there's really no record of it unless the DEA has put a watch on your phone. But of course, with a cell phone, there's a record of every call right on the bill. And the staff said, Mr. Speaker, you ought to think about this. There's going to be a record of every phone call here made by every member. And so he decided, okay, every member who wants a cell phone will get one. And that's everyone. He said, but instead of listing the cell phones in each member's name, instead of saying, cell phone bill showing Representative Arthur Brazzoni, San Francisco, all cell phones were listed in one name, Willie Brown. And so you would look at the phone records for 1 a.m. Saturday morning, and there'd be 13 phone calls.
See, that's Willie Brown.
From all across the That's an example of just.
But no matter what people may think of him, what an extraordinary negotiator and the originator of compromise. I mean, he understands that probably better than anyone I've seen.
But I think his basic rubric is you build consensus, and you have to have compromise, and you build consensus. I mean, one of the things that he said is the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington view of democracy, the movie where a candidate comes along who so enchants the public that he is elected and goes to the temple and cleans out the thieves. He said, doesn't happen. That's
there's a preceding act before consensus, and that is he had the great ability to create loyalty in very different ways. And for example, as commissioners, they listened to him. They were independent voices. Well, that's how that's one way of building consensus, and he knew how to give you something and get something.
And that's the first rule of negotiation is to get, you got to give.
And the other way around, too.
And the other way around. But I think that, it's fair to say that one thing Willie Brown and George W. Bush agree, and that is the theory of the unitary executive. I think that in his view, this is, as mayor, there was only one boss.
That's right.
And it was there. And I remember one commissioner, one of his appointees who was on a commission, told me about some piece of business that had come up before the commission. The Mayor Brown wanted the vote to go one way, and this commissioner said to the mayor, he said, I don't think I can support that. And the mayor said to him, you don't think until I give you permission to think.
That's correct.
One of the things that he does do, and we'll get into this in the book, is he talks about some appointments that he made as mayor that he says were very bad appointments. And will he do any kind of revelation of the kinds of things people would like to know, what we're really going through his mind? Are you going to reveal some of that? Or is it going to be a real formal book that just perpetuates who he is, just an extension of what he was as a mayor? No, it has to be in his own voice, and it has to reveal what was going on in his mind, as well as the rules. It's not going to be. But
will it reveal any? Real more secretive information about what was really going on at that time?
Let me put it this way to you: I have an asbestos keyboard.
Okay. Now for a moment, let's contrast and compare that mayor, one of the most powerful mayors in the old tradition of San Francisco, with the current mayor. Things have changed since you were here. I hear, because I do this program, I get lots of rumors and things, that this mayor is very disengaged and lets his commissioners do pretty much what they want.
Well, I once asked him about this, Mayor Newsom, about this, and his view is that, this is not only his mayoral style, but he believes that this is part of his mandate, which is to have a government by independent commission rather than a government by a boss mayor. So he regards commissions feeling their own way and finding their own way on issues as part of the process. This mayor is a big believer in process. Mayor Brown was a big believer in results.
But don't you think, though, and that assumes that there's a process going on.
Yeah.
There's some who say that really it's the board that controls the agenda now because this mayor has a different style than what we were just talking about, for whatever reason, and that the gap has been filled by some very interesting characters at the Board of Supervisors.
Well, there's a corollary to what he told me, which is that he believes that commissions should be finding their own way. And but then he said, "But I expect them to vote on the budget." There's there's process and there's going sideways, and he doesn't really. Mayor Newsom doesn't want his commissioners going completely I don't think that the sense of where the agenda lies or where or the style may have to do with the fact that he is following a very strong and distinctive mayor. And I think there's a kind of natural reaction to swing in the other direction. I think that also fits his personality. But where the agenda of the city is, I hate to think that it's the board that's calling the agenda. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, this board is so unimpressive. I mean, these guys can't even tell a joke. There's not even a humorous member on this board. You just cry for some sign of something other than pettiness and picayune behavior.
And every time, when I watch that station of them at work, it seems like every time someone speaks, it's like Patrick Henry. Every speech has to be at a dramatic declaration.
Oh, it's at fever pitch.
Yeah. Well, when I said agenda, I didn't necessarily mean a positive agenda. It seems like the board is being obstructions. It's housing,
right.
Restrictive parking, restrict this, restrict that, restrict smoking, restrict plastic bags. But in the absence of a strong mayor that has a strong agenda, I want to go here, which Willie Brown definitely did. They're taking advantage of that. That's what I hear.
Well, I think that there is probably a kind of what might look like a vacuum there right now, but I'm not so sure that it really is. This is the third year of the administration, and the third year is always a perilous year. It's a dangerous year. I mean, by the time you get to the third year, people have decided they see cracks in your veneer. They're mad at you because they didn't get something this way or that way. Other people are getting the juices going. Well, I might run, I might do something like that. So they begin to pick. So I think that translates into even more obstructionism. Yet this mayor his process is very slow and sure. I would have an idea that, if you had to look in one of the many books that he has lying on his desk, with his own agenda and all this stuff, you'd find scrawled into one on the flyleaf the phrase, "Vengeance is a dish best eaten cold." So I don't think that he is unaware of things. I think the other thing is that in the last month or so, he seems to begun to relax a little bit. I think you go into that third year just ready for onslaught. And I think also, his personal life was difficult with the end of the marriage, and now he's got the new girlfriend, and things are picking up. But I have an idea that you will start to see as you go into the second half of the third year, into the fourth year, more of a stated agenda.
You think so?
And I think as mayor, one of the things you have to do is you have to communicate big things to people, and you have to communicate optimism about them. But you don't have to do that from day one. You don't have to do it every day. But people do expect you to convey some optimism about where we are and what we're doing.
Well,
here.
we'll be waiting for that, but we'll also be waiting for your book when it comes out.
Good.
And I wish you the best with that.
Well, thank you.
I will be one of the people that will read about Willie Brown, because he's a historical figure, no matter whether you think he was positive or negative. We've got to go now.
Okay.
P.J. Corkery, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Arthur.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. Visit our website at www.sfunscripted.com.